Now, in this episode, we're going to be talking about different types of accidents in vehicles: car, truck, motorcycle, or pedestrian accidents. In Pennsylvania, if you are injured from the negligence of another, if you were in a car or a truck hit you, or you are a pedestrian, or you were on your motorcycle, you are entitled to compensation for your damages and your injuries. And that's what we're going to talk about on this episode. So now we're going to talk a little bit about car accidents in Western Pennsylvania. Now, as we mentioned on previous episodes, Pittsburgh is a destination place for many events: games, weddings, air shows, graduations, school. A lot of people come to Pittsburgh for different types of events. Unfortunately, there are times where people come here and they are injured as a result of the negligence of another. Now, what we see in car accidents, usually what we see are rear end accidents, where someone gets bumped, they're following too close, and they bump someone or they run into the rear of someone else. If that is you and you are injured as a negligence of another and you are rear-ended as a rear-end collision, someone following too closely, you want to contact a Pittsburgh injury lawyer because a lot of things are in place. Number one, your injuries. They may not be evident in the very beginning. They may not manifest themselves until later on. So you want to make sure you get the treatment you need, whether you need to go to the emergency room, you need to go see your PCP, you need to go to a chiropractor, you need to go to physical therapy. Make sure that you are in the place you should have been, but for that accident, that you are well, you are recovered. Then we can talk about compensation for your injuries. If you've missed work, if you missed opportunities, all those things can be discussed with your Pittsburgh injury lawyer because all those things could come into play as a result of the negligence of another. Whether it be back injuries, whether it be whiplash, whether it be soft tissue, whether it be any other injuries, especially if there's anyone else in your car, anyone else in your vehicle as a result of that rear end collision of the negligence of someone else. Car accidents are very typical in Western Pennsylvania, especially in Pittsburgh, because we have the tunnels, we have all the different bridges, all different merging areas, the one-way streets. People who are not from here, even people who are from here, they don't understand the different nuances of our roads and our streets. And all of a sudden they are driving too fast for conditions. They're following too close. They're being inattentive, meaning that they are on their cell phone or they're on the radio or they're doing a vlog or they're filming with their phone as they're driving. I mean, it happens. People are on social media while they're driving. They're just not paying attention to the road. Younger drivers, older drivers, people all in between are making the same mistakes, or they've been driving for too long and they're driving through and they need to take a rest and they're just not ready to continue on driving and they're sleeping at the wheel or literally asleep at the wheel. All these factors play into car accidents, and that's why it's important you contact the Pittsburgh injury lawyer because they can look into all those factors. They can subpoena all, maybe even cameras. They're filming people as they're coming through the tunnel, or they're filming people at a intersection, or they're taking pictures at an intersection. And you want to get all that evidence to help your case so you can get the compensation for the injuries that you deserve. Now, let's talk a little bit about motorcycle accidents. Now, a lot of people like to think about motorcycle drivers are the people who are racing through traffic and they're on their motorcycle and they're riding with a bunch of buddies and they're just racing all over the place being reckless. That's not the typical motorcycle driver. Typical motorcycle drivers is someone who's on their bike and they're riding around town. They're obeying all laws. They're obeying traffic laws. And I trust that's you. And if that's you, you are entitled to drive on the streets as everyone else. And you're entitled to be treated fairly like anyone else. There are a lot of biases against people who are on bikes, but that's unfair bias because if you're driving and you're obeying all laws, you are to be treated as anyone else on the streets in Western Pennsylvania. If you are injured as a result of the negligence of someone else, you are entitled to compensation just like anyone else. You want to make sure someone's there to document the accident, and then make sure you contact a Pittsburgh injury lawyer who can help you unpack the entire scene. Getting pictures from people, getting video from people. If you have cameras on your motorcycle, you want to make sure that gets turned over to the injury lawyer so we can find out who are the other witnesses who were around. Maybe there's someone's license plate in view where we can get that information and get them called as a witness to get their statement to help you with your case, with your injuries. Many times when you're injured as a result of the negligence of someone else, that case may be resolved in a settlement. And that's predominantly the majority of all the cases. They're ending in settlement. There's a settlement for your injuries, settlement for your pain and suffering, settlement maybe for your lost wages. Now, in some cases, it may have to go to trial. And if it goes to trial, that attorney must understand the bias inherent in the people who are maybe sitting on the jury. So we want to make sure we ferret out those people to make sure you get a fair and balanced jury who can sit and listen to the evidence and render a verdict based solely on the evidence and not about any bias interfering with their thinking and logic. And that's what we are looking for. And that's what you're entitled to when you have to pick a jury and go forward on your case, taking it all the way to trial. Let's talk a little bit about pedestrian accidents. And many times, if you are a student in Pittsburgh or you are just walking around visiting and you are walking on the sidewalk and you're injured by the negligence of someone else, let's say you're a pedestrian and you're walking and you get hit by a car because of an accident, a drunk driver who's not safely able to operate their vehicle because they are impaired under the influence of alcohol, under the influence of narcotic, and you are hit and seriously injured. You need to contact a Pittsburgh injury lawyer because you need to get all the information from the accident. And sometimes, especially if it's a drunk driver, you want to get the criminal information about them because they're going to go through a criminal process. You want to make sure if they had a valid license. If they didn't, you want to get that information. You want to get all the information from the criminal process and then use it in your process when you're moving forward, trying to get the compensation for the injuries you deserve. So it's very important you contact a Pittsburgh injury lawyer because you're going to get all the information from the criminal process to use in your case to help you get the compensation you deserve based on the injuries as a result of the negligence of someone else. Let's talk a bit about insurance coverage. Any type of insurance coverage you need that may fill the gap between the person who injured you and your actual cost of your injuries and the cost of making you whole again. Many times when someone's injured, you're looking towards the insurance policy of the person who injured you. And sometimes they don't have insurance. Sometimes they are underinsured, like the limits are not high enough to cover the damages and the cost of medical treatment, physical therapy, or any visits to any other specialist for the injuries that were caused by the negligence of someone else. Many times, your insurance may kick in as an underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage, whereas that person didn't have sufficient coverage or they had no coverage whatsoever. And now your insurance would have to kick in. And that's why it's very important you contact a Pittsburgh injury lawyer because we need to know what's available. And if it's not available, where else we can get the coverage to cover you for your injuries as a result of the negligence of someone else. Let's talk a little bit about trucking accidents and how they differ from regular car accidents. Now, if you are injured as a result of the negligence of a trucking driver who is driving for another company, they need to be treated differently. And here's why. Many times they have defense attorneys and defense departments, and they have attorneys on their payroll. And their sole purpose is to make sure they don't have to pay out, or if they have to pay out, they pay out the least amount possible for your case. They may be totally at fault, but their job is to quickly swoop in, settle the matter for pennies on the dollar to make sure you don't get enough money for your injuries. You get enough to sign the release and move on, and they can move on. And now they've avoided another costly lawsuit. So it's very important that after you seek treatment for your injuries as a result of a trucking accident, you contact a Pittsburgh injury lawyer who is sufficiently experienced in dealing with trucking injuries, because you need to send out investigators. You need to take pictures of all the information on the door, the license plate, the scene. Maybe we even want to recreate the accident scene to find out exactly what happened, how fast the person was going, whether they were under the influence, whether they were distracted. Many times I look at YouTube videos and you see these fancy trucks and you look at the cabs, the day in the life of a truck driver. They have someone or spouses in the back sleeping, maybe even cooking up meals and lunches. They have a huge screen in there where they could be watching TV, they can be asleep, they could be on their headset talking to someone else, and they're not paying attention to what's going on. Now, sometimes there's a video that covers all of the entire inside cab, and we need to get that footage immediately because sometimes, it's lost, or it was taped over, or you're not entitled to that, or we don't know where that's at. You need investigators who can go in and grab that information. An experienced Pittsburgh injury lawyer knows to get a subpoena for that information. Get all that evidence in your favor that can prove they were negligent and they caused the injuries that you are suffering, and to make sure you get the compensation you deserve for those injuries before the attorneys come in and try to settle it for pennies on the dollar. Now, it's also very, very helpful if we can get dash cam footage, whether it be from your vehicle or whether it be from the other person's vehicle, whether it be a truck driver, a car driver, anyone who caused the accident, who is the tortfeasor, the person who is at fault. If they have dash cam footage, we want that. If you have dash cam footage, we want that. Also, the data box it's also called the black box on vehicles. It shows how fast you were going. It shows the speed of impact, at the time you entered your brake. All that information can be obtained. All that data can be obtained from the box, the data box on the vehicle, on the car, or on the truck. And we want to make sure we obtain that in a timely fashion because it can show a lot of things. The data doesn't lie. And if it shows that you were going a certain speed or they were going a certain speed and the speed of impact and the speed at the time you put on the brakes, at the location you put on your brakes, it can show the longitude, latitude, it can show the GPS coordinates, it can show a whole lot of details that you wouldn't ordinarily get or you wouldn't otherwise get, but for getting that data from that black box. So it's very important you contact a Pittsburgh injury lawyer so we can subpoena that if need be, sit down investigators and make sure we preserve that evidence so it doesn't disappear. And another thing, you want to make sure you take pictures of any driver's logs, data logs, any type of rest logs that the truck driver would have on their person that they have to show and they have to produce when they are stopped either by police or they're stopped as an accident. Make sure you get pictures of all that, every single page, the cover, the front cover, the back cover, the license, the copy of the CDL, the inside of the cab. Take pictures of everything because that information could be important when moving forward, trying to get the compensation for the injuries you deserve. Because if they've been on the road for too long and they haven't rested, or they've been driving for a certain amount of time straight and they were required to take breaks and take off a certain period of time, and it was mandated that they take off that time and they didn't, that could become a problem. If they are arrested because they are under the influence or suspicion of being under the influence, that criminal complaint, that affidavit of probable cause, all those documents from the criminal proceeding could be helpful. Any type of discipline log they had in the past, or whenever they've been subject to discipline in the past from their company for speeding, for other accidents, for not paying attention to the rest requirements, for not paying attention to the mileage requirements. All that information could be critical in resolving your case. So it's very important that your Pittsburgh injury lawyer get that information because it helps you get the compensation you deserve for the injuries as a result of the negligence of someone else. Now, let's talk a little bit about the types of trucking accidents. And many times it's pretty obvious. It's a rear end collision. It's a front end collision. It's a side swipe. And there's also override accidents, underride accidents, jackknife. You didn't secure the load on your truck, like logging accidents. There's all types of accidents for trucking involving a truck. And you need to make sure your Pittsburgh injury lawyer can get you the compensation you deserve as a result of all of those accidents. Also, we want to talk about the different types and causes of trucking accidents. Now, let's say, for example, the person is driving for so long and they are taking some type of speed, or they have tons of energy drinks to keep them up. They are plowing through the route and they're ignoring all the rest stops, the mandatory rest breaks, and they just want to keep going because they want to get there early to pick up another load and come back and make a little bit more money, or they're under a deadline and they're doing these things to stay awake. Now, that could be a negligent action against them because now all of a sudden they're ignoring all the safety parameters, what they should be paying attention to. They should be taking the breaks. They should be stopping after a certain period of time. And they're ignoring that. And them ignoring that cause an accident, a jackknife, an override, an underride, a rear end collision, a total flip, an unsecured load. And all of a sudden that negligent caused injuries to you or someone you love. You are entitled to compensation for that. And also, you want to take a look at what cause outside of the keeping them up. What other negligent actions could they be responsible for? A DUI. Let's say they have something else in their system other than DUI that they're just taking because they're on the road for so long and they're trying to stay active and they're trying to stay aware and they're not paying attention. You want to make sure you get copies of all those toxicology reports. If there is a police officer who is dispatched to the scene and they're taking up evidence and they're taking up all the information in contemplation of possibly charging them with a criminal offense, you need all that information to help you in your trucking accident case. Let's talk a little bit about what you should do immediately following a trucking accident. Now, if you are the victim involved in a trucking accident at the scene, Make sure you get pictures of everything, document everything, document the location, maybe do a video, do a tons of pictures on your phone. Then immediately after the accident, when everyone's safe and everyone's getting away from the scene, they're going their separate ways, you're going to be contacted by their insurance company. You're going to be contacted by their attorneys, and they're going to try to settle your case. They're going to try to pressure you into a resolution, pressure you into signing a release to see if they can avoid liability. Why would they want to avoid liability? Because typically trucking accidents are catastrophic and they cause catastrophic injury, serious injury, sometimes even death. And they know if they are facing a Pittsburgh injury lawyer on the other side who is experienced in prosecuting and pushing those cases forward, they know they can be subject to high fines, costs, and maybe even a settlement or a jury verdict that can be upwards of what they were trying to pay for that accident. So please, don't listen to their attorneys. Don't speak with their insurance company. Contact your own Pittsburgh injury lawyer who's experienced in trucking accidents so they can tell you what you should expect in this process, what you are able to recover, and how you can be compensated for your injuries. Let's talk about trucking accidents that are not officially the tractor trailer trucks that we know about. There's other types of trucks. Let's talk about delivery trucks, whether it be FedEx, UPS, DHL, Amazon trucks, cable company trucks, postal service trucks and vehicles, any type of vehicles that are not commonly known as cars or sedans that are riding on the road. They may be delivering and they may have an industrial function, meaning they are delivering on behalf of a company, or they're serving a function and serving a job on behalf of a company. You need to make sure you have a Pittsburgh injury lawyer who can differentiate between the vehicle and person who's driving on behalf of a company, because those companies could be liable for the injuries that you suffered as a result of the negligence of their driver. And many times we have third-party drivers for Amazon and other delivery companies, and they're driving on behalf of someone else. And they're driving, let's say Amazon subcontracts to someone else. There may be a different relationship between Amazon and that third-party driver. Please, that injury lawyer should be able to determine if there is a relationship and to what extent the parent company is liable for your injuries. Thanks again for listening to this podcast episode. If you need to contact us, you can visit us online, frankwalkerlaw.com, or give us a call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 412-532-6805. That's 412-532-6805.